Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we have another amazing guest joining us, Kwame, founder of Synthetic Users. Hello, Kwame. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Barry. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. That we know you're super busy, so we appreciate that. Now, for those who don't know you, Kwame, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at?
Yeah, I'm Kwame. I'm the founder of Synthetic Users. That's the company I currently work at. I've been creating companies for a while, some more successful than others. So I think you could say I am a serial entrepreneur, whatever that means. The last vessel is Synthetic Users.
What is it in particular that you like about starting companies or enterprises? There must be something like really appealing to you. Do you just like the difficult work and the stressful sleepless nights?
Yeah, I'm addicted to pain. You must be definitely a stoic, borderline masochist, if you want to get into this line of work. For me, it's inevitable, in the sense that I look at the world, I see problems. I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by teams that look at those problems with equally curious minds, and we're able to create solutions. And those solutions sometimes become companies, right? Become businesses when we're solving the need or solving the problems at hand. So I guess it's the being an entrepreneur is the byproduct of walking the world with very curious eyes, wanting to, for the most part, solve problems. Yeah.
Was it something that you always wanted to do, like ever since you were a child? Like some people just want to be entrepreneurs, or is it something that maybe it just happened to be that way?
No, I'm from a time when entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing yet. So that I didn't really have a model for entrepreneur. I grew up in an era where it was, my models were, I don't know, Michael Jordan and and Bill Gates wasn't even in the radar because his most of his products were so buggy that we didn't. I personally didn't really enjoy that experience. I think one stumbles into it, and the reason being, um, we grew up I grew up in an age where technology became increasingly empowering of one's creativity and one's ability to solve problems. And so I am a byproduct of that age and the acceleration in that tech curve. Um, yeah, no more, no less. And so yes, I think uh, it's all about timing, right? And I've been riding this wave along with many others, and always very curious about what the next technology might yield, um, and in terms of possibilities. And then it's very much like solutions looking for problems in many ways, right? You have like
Mm.
something, you have a computer, it's like, oh, what can we do this? Oh, we can actually solve that problem. We have AI. Oh, what can we do this? We can actually, try and replicate human behavior. We have a mobile phone. What can we do this? Oh, well, we can, prevent fires or the or addict teenagers into increasing levels of self harm. So
Mm.
you have choices, right?
Yeah.
And it's not very clear cut at the beginning of whatever journey you undertake, but yeah, very very fast, very soon thereafter, you realize, okay, you're onto something. It's adding value to people's lives. They're paying for it. They definitely want it. And yeah, and you look in the mirror, and that's who you are.
So just one more question before we go on to synthetic users itself. When you're developing these companies, do you have like quite tight control? You know exactly the direction it's going in, and you kind of have an idea of the outcome, or do you kind of find yourself kind of caught up in the maelstrom and just flitting around trying to take control back of the direction that the company's heading in?
I think it's important to have a clear vision of where of the world, of the reality you want, right? And you want to build towards. The path towards that goal is quite sinuous, and you will meander, a very sometimes fertile, sometimes desert-like valley. The vision must be quite clear. And a lot of the times in technology, one could be accused of not having a very clear vision beyond what, I don't know, what the Jetsons laid out, and what sci-fi from the 1950s and Star Trek and have painted for us. I think a lot of tech entrepreneurs, that's the world. That world has already been painted a long time ago, and they're kind of filling in the gaps. With regards to synthetic users, just to segue into it, it was definitely a solution looking for a problem when we started playing with large language models way before most people. And the problem became clear when we looked in the mirror and realized, look, we have a real issue here with research. It takes forever. Is there a way we can accelerate? Is there a way we can complement current research practices so we can surface insights a lot faster and mitigate risk by accelerating decision making? So that's the process. It's never linear. It's never pretty. It's messy. Uh, but it must have a clear vision. Otherwise, otherwise you're just going with the flow. And I say it must. In my case, it must have a clear vision. I'm sure there are plenty of entrepreneurs out there who have, by all metrics, been very successful without a clear vision. And they're just like, oh, this is what we need to do. We need to make it a little better, a little faster, and we'll be really aggressive at sales. And now you have a business, right? So there are many ways to go about meandering towards some sort of positive outcome. Yeah, in my case, it's about a clear vision, and it's also needed because everything's teamwork, and you need to be able to sit down with your team, and we all need to believe where we're going, right? That North Star needs to be there, and it's less about what it used to be in corporate America, like very hollow values that you'd frame on a wall and no one really believed. I think it's increasingly pragmatic, and it needs to be somewhat tangible. Okay, this is where we're going, and we need to be able to quickly measure if we're right? If the path we're undertaking as leaders and we're asking others to follow is the correct one. And there are there are processes in place to ensure that that people stay with you on that journey, and that journey towards whatever vision you have is visible to everyone. Like you want to know where you are, right? And that's why you have vesting options, and you have a number of mechanisms to keep your team aligned towards that goal. And when your team starts to go, you realize, okay, maybe they are questioning that vision, or maybe they're questioning your ability to lead them there. But something is definitely gone awry.
who is synthetic users actually for?
We started with very large corporations, the Fortune 100s. That's who we are serving.
Mhm.
Within those companies, to be a little bit more tangible, we're talking about research teams that need to accelerate their research cycles. They tend to be um, quite quite long, very process driven, and we come in with a complement, with an addition to their already quite extensive toolkit, and through it, through synthetic users, they're able to um, accomplish a lot of what takes them a very long time to do so in the organic world, right? So it's
Yeah.
synthetic versus organic. The and yeah, research teams primarily, and then you have design teams, you have product teams, you have the C-suite that wants to. It's really an infrastructural play. If you look at it, we are creating a mirror of a company's organic users or customer base, that anybody within that company can interact with and use it as a simulation, right? As a way to test things out, without having to commit too many resources, without uh, trying trying to mitigate risk, as I've said before, and really ensuring higher probability of success in the various endeavors that they undertake, whether in marketing or product. So that's who synthetic users is for, and that's how it's been used. We'd like to think of ourselves as very much like a recruitment agency,
Mm.
but instead of recruiting, you are synthesizing users, and as you um, and the ability to quickly access those users um, allows you to reframe your problems, allows you to spend a lot more time with synthetic users than you ever will with your organic users,
Mm.
which is a bonus. A lot of the times, it allows you to ask questions that you would never ask to an organic user, to that organic user. And like if you take war, like you're trying to synthesize users in war zones or trauma victims, um, or even like super wealthy individuals, they're not going to give you their time of day to sit down with you, and so you understand their behavioral patterns around a particular topic or service. So this ability to simulate human behavior from your customers is extremely powerful, right? And it's an easy idea to sell, right? You can,
Mm.
and my 10-year-old understands it perfectly, um, and it's but it is a challenging idea to. And it's easy to sell to your team as well. Like, guys, this is the vision. We really want to replicate human behavior to 99.9% percentage. So we want to be able to predict jury outcome, 12 people in a room, guilty, not guilty, as much as we want to be able to predict whether 250,000 people in New York State are going to buy the next product to come out of Nike or Apple. And if they're not going to, why not? And what exactly should the right price point be? Have these conversations with your audience at a qualitative scale, so with small numbers, and at a large scale, where eventually we're predicting elections, we're predicting the behavior of larger groups of individuals. Yeah, with everything that presents from a moral and an ethical and a socioeconomical perspective. So
It's really kind of interesting because we have had a conversation before this podcast, and one of the things I remember you telling me, which I found really fascinating at the time, was about you didn't want to create like perfect synthetic users. You didn't want to create like infinitely known beings who are very predictable and always do the same thing. You wanted flawed, you wanted irrational behavior. Am I right in saying that that was your thought process, or am I a little bit off?
Look, we're trying. That's spot on in the sense that we're trying to predict human behavior. So, um, and human behavior is not is messy, is hard to predict in at different levels. So when we're talking about simulating or synthesizing a human population, there is going to be in that population a number of individuals who are racists, right? Who are misogynistic, who display all sorts of kind of mental illnesses that that any one of us would frown upon, but they do exist. They're part of that corpus, and they need to be factored in, right? So it would be disingenuous and outright statistically wrong to present a sanitized version of a population to one of our clients, because the outcomes would just be wrong, right? They would be sanitized and therefore not they wouldn't match. So when we talk about synthetic to organic parity, which is the only thing we care about and what we're constantly measuring, you would very quickly you'd realize, oh, this is these people don't exist because they're too politically correct or they're too sanitized, as I've said. So yeah, the biases, when we talk about biases, are your synthetic users biased? I hope they are as biased as your organic users are, right? That's the whole point here. And it's easier said than done, especially in a world where if you're just relying on large language models to synthesize your population, let's say you don't have a budget to run synthetic users, but you're using Gemini or Claude or any of these, and you go, imagine that you are this user and you're doing that. The you're relying on a machine that is really all about super intelligence in terms of their agenda. They're going after AGI. We all know that. We all feel like these machines are getting better. They're less and less hallucinations. We have that tacit experience, and there's a real difference between super intelligent beings and your customers, you and I. We're not super AI intelligent. Our architecture is fundamentally different in terms of how our brain was put together as opposed to a transformer model. We are at the core. We have these kind of primordial architectures around very quick emotional reactions to whatever is put in front of us. Only then do you kind of add layers of reasoning. So fundamentally different to large language models in many ways. In many ways, quite similar. So in other ways, quite similar. So at least with us, it's about being able to leverage the technology that's available and sitting on the shoulders of these amazing giants, these labs, spitting a new large language model every 10 minutes, and making sure that we're able to orchestrate all this and into our architecture that outputs the best, the absolute best synthetic to organic parity. So the best prediction of human behavior that we have so far.
Is it your goal to actually replace organic users and only have synthetic users, or is it something that you're always going to need a balance?
I don't know. I think if I would say replace, that means like, okay, well, what we're trying to do here is really replace users at every level. And that was never the goal. The goal is to predict human behavior. The consequence of that goal, if reached and when reached, it is going to be some sort of replacement, right? But what we've noticed, for example, is at first we had a lot of pushback from researchers that were like, "Oh, this is awful. This is like they're replacing us as well." And the reality is actually quite different. The best research within synthetic fuses is done by researchers and not by designers. If you compare the research outputs of a study that was created by a researcher versus a product manager, it's very likely that the results and the insights that the researcher gets are much more relevant, simply because the researcher has been doing this forever. They have the right intuition, and they're just able to create better outputs. So definitely not replacing researchers. Are we replacing organic users? A lot of the times we are creating users that are very similar to, let's say you want to talk to a wealth manager. A wealth manager is not going to talk to you for under a certain amount of money, and for many, they just simply aren't interested. So what replacement are you enacting when you synthesize that user? You're not really like, you're actually freeing that user from having to be harassed by a recruitment agency asking them to, if they have 30 minutes for some sort of survey or in-depth interview. So if there are, and there is a large part of the population that there is a part of the population that relies or has a little bit of its annual income relying on surveys, right? And on maybe those we are replacing. And for the most part, we should replace them because those are professional survey takers. One day they're a physician, the other day they're, a professional rally driver. And, like, how do you know? There's just so much, there's so much fraud in that system, right? In that organic system. Who are we really, wouldn't it be nice to be able to replace that? Absolutely, right? So in some ways we're replacing, in other ways we're completely additive because we're not replacing. I think if we step back, you'll see that we are a complement, right? We are just like in most of technology, we're still listening to vinyl, right? And it's still growing. I had a vinyl business at some point in my life. We're still we're still doing a lot of analog stuff when you could be doing digital, but digital has definitely taken over. And in research, it's not going to be any different, right? If you want to do vinyl, if you want to do organic, you'll continue to be able to do that. But it will be a smaller chunk of the market. As and that feels inevitable. I don't think I'm being arrogant when I paint that picture.
Thank you so much for your time today. We are pushing time a little bit, so I just want to ask you one more question, if I may, before we draw to an end. You've had a lot of experience building companies, being an entrepreneur. Someone watching this might want to be an entrepreneur themselves. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, if somebody is watching this and wants to become an entrepreneur because of what I said, Barry, you're doing very well, right? I am, as a skeptical person, I highly doubt it. Look, action breeds information, right? That's one of the, I guess, tenets of what I believe in. Try things out, and you'll find out. And if you just think about things, they'll never happen. So create is increasingly easier. Create, launch, open your eyes, look around. Like, is that really a problem that you're solving for? Is that need has been really identified, or are you just projecting? Do people really want that, right? And create and see if there's a fit. That's it. That it's the most logical thing to say. I don't have any wiser words than those, if those can be deemed wise. So yeah.
Thank you for the humility and the pearls of wisdom that you've shared with us. Listen, Kwame, I just want to thank you so much again for talking with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That was Kwame, founder of Synthetic Users.